Snap Market.
This episode is brought to you by Snap Market, a hyper-efficient marketing subscription. No contracts, no hiring, no firing, just great work. Find out more and subscribe today at snapmarket.co.
Like you guys in the software world think that you're so unique in terms that you have all this data. And back in the days, it was like the Google Analytics and the KISS metrics and like, look at how things are converting and that sort of thing. And he basically said, look, you've got like this software web view of the world, but you realize that people have been struggling with this product and consumer thing across all industries.
How do you apply jobs to be done at a high level in a chief product officer role? We have Chris Speck here to talk to us about that today. So let's get into it.
Do you want to decommoditize your products and services? Do you want to become a destination brand, increase your revenue, and have more control over your pricing? Well, you're in the right place. Each week, we'll talk about how to create great customer experiences and how to orient your company to enable them. I'm your host, Devin Smith, and this is the Experience Leader Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Super excited for the episode that we have today. I've got Chris Speck with us. Chris is a longtime friend of another friend of the show, Bob Mesta, and he is a high-level jobs practitioner. He is one of the grand masters, as I like to say, and I'm super excited to have him talk about how he has applied jobs to be done in his role, founding. Being a co-founder of the Rewired Group and also now as the Chief Product Officer at Autobooks. If you want to find Chris, you can find him on Twitter. Be sure to give him a follow and make sure that if you have any questions to send them in and maybe we can try to get those answered for you. So without further ado, here is Chris. Chris, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Doing great, Devin. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Man, it is an absolute pleasure. As everybody knows, I'm a big fan of Bob. I followed your work for many years and just saw that you guys launched an awesome new feature at Autobooks something that I've been wanting for years for Apple to just do. I've actually worked on products in my consulting work. I've worked on products where we had hoped that Apple would enable that functionality. You want to tell the folks about that a little bit?
Yeah, it feels like it's magic. This is what Apple does so well, right? So the short version is if I'm a small business owner, really anybody working at a business, I can now take my iPhone. If somebody owes me money, hold it out. Someone can tap their credit card on the screen of my phone, and I've just done a credit card transaction and accepted money into my checking account, essentially. So yeah, it's a fantastic service. I'm sure we'll get into a little more details about Autobooks' role in there. But to be able to offer this now to millions of small business owners across the U.S. is really, really exciting.
Man, that is amazing. I can't tell you how how many times I've been in a situation where we're just like, Apple, just open up this functionality to other people, please.
Yeah, you're right, because they had it at the store. You're going to the Apple store, right? And they've got it, and it's just not. And then everywhere else you go, someone's fighting with the dongle thing, trying to get or the Bluetooth connection, trying to get it linked, or you're typing in. I had a guy a couple weeks ago take a picture. He had he was fixing my sprinkler system at my house, and he had it was taking a picture of the back of my card. And I'm in the credit card, I'm in the payments industry, so it wasn't a big deal to me. But I started thinking, like, how many people freak out when you do this and you hold your phone and you snap the picture of the card to do the OCR thing to get the numbers that can't be like that pleasant of an experience for all, for everyone involved. So now, yeah, it's the most seamless. You key in the amount that you want, you hold out your phone, they tap the card, you're done, and you're on the way to the next deal. So it's really exciting.
That is awesome. So yeah, we'll definitely get into more detail on that. So one of the things I want to do first is just kind of let people know kind of your story So how did you, my understanding of Chris Speck starts at the Rewired Group and your work
Yeah.
with Bob. Like, tell me like your background. Like, how did you even wind up there?
Yeah, it's a funny story, and I think it's becoming a more common story today, especially in recent months. So, I started in the software industry on the building side. So, started off in software development, building applications for companies, internal enterprise applications as well as consumer facing applications, and I did that for basically the first decade of my career, and it was one of the things where I was spending so much energy building that eventually I started to take inventory of things and say, how many of these things that I'm investing in, not financially because I'm just an employee. I ended up being an owner of a software company, but how many things am I investing my energy in are actually becoming successful commercially, in the market? And the numbers just weren't great. And when I started to, push back on ideas and, from the developer role, say, we talked to some customers, like, why are you asking us to actually build it this way? Why do you think it'll be successful? It turns out I was kind of in the wrong role to be asking those questions, right? It was like, just go build the thing and, do the thing that we pay you for. But my curiosity continued. And I think a lot of engineers are in this position, have always been in this position, right? Like, prove to me that if the team goes, on this journey, that it's going to yield positive business value for the company and for customers and things like that. And I just started to have this insatiable itch. So I started studying things like personas and need states and shopper marketing and anything that I could get my hands on to try to understand what would lead me to just be able to build better software. And throughout that journey, this is just serendipity. Bob Mesta and I are both in the Metro Detroit area. He ended up hiring my company to build a bunch of software for him. And it was one of those things where there was like this sense to all the projects. And so eventually I, kind of cornered him like, look, man, what I feel like the specifications that you bring me are very different than all of my other customers. When I push back on you and sort of question, you have like all of this really insightful information about how you think your customer is going to behave and what they value. And I just like the contrast was so stark between Bob and everybody else that I was working with that eventually I had to say, look, man, just like you got to give me the answer here, like because I've been trying to study this stuff, and you seem like you have the answer, and we're kind of like a client vendor relationship here, but I'm really curious about how you're figuring this out. And at the time, so this is like mid 2000s, like 2004, 5, 6, 7. We're kind of going through this journey. He didn't have good answers, right? So the rest of the story was that he and Clay had started to embark on this jobs to be done journey, early 90s, mid 90s. But it was basically Bob and Clay bouncing ideas back and forth, and then Bob just going and applying them in the market, in automotive and real, home building and all the areas that he was working in. So there weren't like formal frameworks or training, or so it was. We had always these interesting interactions where I was saying, "You teach me this stuff," and he's like, "I can talk about it and we can scribble in my notepad, but." I'm in my sort of mid to late 20s. I'm like, I want the book. I want the online course. Like, where do I go just to like get up to speed on this? And eventually we both realized that there was just a need to both formalize and spread the word about this in the product and engineering community, because again, I wasn't the only one struggling with it. There were a lot of engineers saying, we're getting specifications and we want to be passionate and pour our energy into this, but we also really want to be sure that we're building something that consumers are just going to be passionate about and they're going to embrace, and we're going to see it be wildly successful. So we again serendipitously we both exited businesses. This is around 2007, 2008. Formed the Rewired Group with basically the blessing from Clay that when people approached him and asked about jobs to be done, he would point them in our direction. And so we had a flow of business and sort of a sandbox to play in. We had all these great companies coming to us saying, help us with our product development practices and capabilities. And over the course of about a decade, we were able to formalize a lot of the ways that we talk about jobs to be done. We bring teams together to, apply the practice, the way that we train people and product and engineering teams on how to apply it. Um, and that's kind of the story of how the Rewired group came together.
Wow, that is so cool. So, I mean that even helps me understand some of the origin story of Clay's relationship with the Rewired
Yeah.
group, because just reading Competing Against Luck, I've read that book like so many times, and I recommend it to everybody. Anytime anybody comes to me asking like, Devin, how do I get into product management and stuff? I'm like, you read this book first, and then we're going to talk
Yeah.
about it. and
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great jumping off point.
yeah, and Clay tells in the book some of the stories of the Rewired group. He doesn't name the Rewired group specifically, but he tells the stories of Bob and you guys basically doing some of this work, and some of the most powerful jobs to be done stories that really sold me on the theory came from the work that you guys were doing.
Yeah, we had an exciting. Bob is obviously still doing the work. I had the itch to go back and build, right? It was like 10 years of doing the consulting thing and being part of so many great teams. And eventually, if you're a builder, you got to go build stuff. So here I am, running the team at Autobooks and building. But yeah, we with the stories. Bob did an interesting thing to me, which I haven't reflected on a whole lot. But the funny thing that he did to me was, like, you guys in the software world think that you're so unique in terms that you have all this data. And back in the days, it was like the Google Analytics and the KISS metrics, and like, look at how things are converting and that sort of thing. And he basically said, look, you've got like this software web view of the world, but you realize that people have been struggling with this product and consumer thing across all industries. For decades. So he basically forcibly pulled me out of that world, and we went to work in consumer packaged goods and food products and like all sorts of energy, fitness, health, things like that. Just to provide contrast and to really, um, it was like I was, because I didn't know the domain, I was forced to go to the customer side of things instead of fixate on the what we call the demand side of things and the technical side of things, right? So um, went into those domains, was just a complete fish out of water. The only thing I brought to the table, sitting around tables of highly skilled chemical engineers working on a food product, was that I could get to the core of what the customer wanted better than anybody else, right? So that was my value, and it was almost like you're so, as an engineer, all of us, right? We're so fixated on the nuts and bolts and the fascination with how the technology works that it's hard. We almost have to force ourselves over onto the supply side into what the customer wants. So he provided me with a couple of years of like, you got to turn that side of your brain off and then, go in this direction. And, and then the stories in the book, right? The great part about my personal story is that it enabled me to come back into the software world with a bunch of tools that were uniquely valuable. And, again, back in my early 20s, I don't think ever in my wildest dreams did I think that I would have the ability to work, with Jason and Ryan at Basecamp, right? And Dez and Owen and the guys at Intercom on, sort of some of their foundational jobs work. A lot of the stories in Competing Against Luck, luckily for me, end up back in software just because it's where my passion on the demand side is. So it was fun to go into those other domains, but then come back and just participate in a lot of the great stories that ended up in case studies in the book.
That's cool. I definitely find myself wanting to basically like dive in on the software thing, because software's been most of my career. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about software, you said you were a software developer, and you spent your time before getting into jobs and doing that consulting work, building, like, what kind of industries were you building in before you got into that?
It was a smattering, like, all across the board. So we did some things with commercial real estate. being able to sell, like heavy machinery, aircraft, things like that. We did a fair amount of work for ad agencies doing content management. This is like, it's funny to think it's been 20 years, right? But all the things that are just like off the shelf you had to build back then, building content management systems for real estate companies and ad agencies and things like that, because there wasn't you didn't have WordPress, you didn't have the sort of CMS systems that you would just pull off the shelf today. So we had we're in Detroit, so we did a little bit of automotive as well. But we had kind of a smattering of businesses that we were just writing software for.
That's really cool. I have a very similar cross pollination thing, and it's interesting to hear about how you being in software and then going and working primarily in consulting and applying jobs to be done with Bob allowed you to go
Yeah.
back to software with a a unique and uniquely valuable, as you said, skill set. I spent the first half of my career in advertising and then went into software.
Yeah.
And it really affected the way that I looked at things. And it gave me a customer lens. Even as I went into user experience design, the way that I looked at it was definitely more 30,000 foot view, when most people just wanted me to build a software. And I'm just like, yeah, but like the whole strategy around what the product is wrong,
Yeah. Well, it doesn't even have to be 30,000 foot, but it's again, I obsess over the language supply side and demand side. If we're spending all of our time, you've got a great entry point from advertising, right? Like how do I, it shares so many similarities with jobs. How do I motivate somebody to take action? And then you've spent a lot of time with Bob recently going deep on jobs, right? In the most recent course that he put out. But the only sort of small tweak that we make to that is like we're not trying to impose on the customer and motivate them. We're trying to understand, meet them where they are, understand what their struggle is, and then let them make progress. But in any case, if the conversation starts with the technology and starts with how whiz bang it's going to be and how everyone's going to love it, and it's like all that, we're already starting in the wrong place. So how do we recalibrate to say, the customer's got to be at the center of this conversation? So I think, whether you run into Bob when you're 24 or 25 and have this thing, or you're in the ad industry, like really trying to figure out, I got to study these people because I'm going to have to get them to take action. They're both great, entrees into building software.
Absolutely. I mean, and being able to think about people's motivations, right? Because advertising just, there's so much that you're trying to affect or latch onto somebody's motivation. So jobs naturally was very attractive to me. And folks on the show have heard me basically preach about jobs to be done so much already. And
Yeah.
you're not done, folks. So just get used to it. But I'm curious about when you transitioned uh, out of consulting and back into building at Autobooks. Tell the folks a bit more about what Autobooks does and how have you been applying jobs at Autobooks?
Yeah, we've got a really cool company here. So the the way that I like to describe it is we essentially help small business owners get paid in a jobs language. That's the foundation of what we do. The detail behind it is we offer a lightweight bookkeeping tool, right? So think QuickBooks, but simplified, not all the fancy reporting and specialized functionality, but it'll get you a loan, it'll get you year-end tax prep. For I always talk about the guy that paints your house for a couple grand, the guy that does your landscaping, a lot of times your lawyer, the IT guy. Fairly simple business models, don't require a lot of whiz bang accounting, but still need to do the basics, right? So we provide that, and then we provide ways to get paid. The way we go to market, and you and I were joking before we hit record, like, why haven't I heard of Autobooks, right? The way we go to market is through banks. So instead of going on to Google and searching for an accounting package, what we found is the pattern of I'm starting a business. The things that I'm going to do are go to my state. I'm going to register at the state. I'm going to get a federal tax ID in most cases. This sort of changes the timeline once in a while. But in most cases, I'm registering, I'm getting a federal tax ID, and then I need a place to put all the money I'm going to make. So I'm going to go to my bank and open a checking account. And what we do is instead of that banker saying, congratulations on opening the business, here's a place, essentially a holding tank where you can park all of your money, which anybody offers, right? All the banks are the same. We now offer something where here's your checking account. If you need to send an invoice, it's got that built in. Put your logo. It's a great looking invoice that includes sales tax and discounts, and you can manage your customers and products and all that sort of thing. You can do it all from your mobile phone if you're doing it from your truck. Send the invoice to your customer, accept credit card and ACH payments, and that money is going to land right into the checking account that you just opened. Again, end of year, because we're connected to your checking account, we're going to do all the reconciliation so you can do year-end tax prep. If you need a loan, most people are getting the shoebox of all the receipts and all the financials and trying to dump it on the accountant so they can get it to the banker. We're integrated with the bank. So we can see all the money moving in, all the money moving out. We can see patterns of receivables and how often your customers pay you and get you in a great position to get a loan because of the lightweight bookkeeping. And then, as we alluded to at the beginning of the show, now face-to-face transactions, what the industry calls card present. So I can send an invoice if I'm not standing next to you. If I am standing next to you, I can key in the amount that you owe me on my phone. You can take out your credit card, tap that amount. Again, that money goes right into the small business checking account, and I'm off to the next gig. So really, we've got a leverage distribution model. That's our business model. We're in about 1,500 banks across the United States right now. And anybody that's looking for Autobooks can essentially, on their mobile phone, open their bank's mobile app, and you'll see usually buttons that say send an invoice, accept a payment, and accounting, and you can get in and start using the service. And what we're really after is 30 to 50 million small businesses in the country today. A lot of them are switching to financial institutions, banks and credit unions that offer this sort of service. And the new businesses that are getting started, how do we keep them from having to bolt together dozens and dozens of SaaS subscriptions and different services just to get started with what they're working on? How do we get them to open the small business checking account, have the tools that they need to get started, and then focus on their craft and focus on pleasing their customers and getting to market?
That is fascinating to me because as we were talking about prior to jumping on here, I am in business for myself, needed all of these things. My bank, unfortunately, does not have Autobooks. So now I'm like, okay, how do I get on the phone with the right person and product at the bank and say, hey, you need to talk to Autobooks people.
We'll figure it out after the call for sure.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
That's I mean, it's a huge value add. Like so when the funny thing is that when I left advertising and went into building software, I went into the bank world. So I worked at Wells Fargo for a little while, and that worked on digital banking, and I can see instantly how it is an amazing sort of strategy for a bank to do this. First of all, because I learned that banks don't really make a ton of money off of consumers. They make most of their money off of businesses, and to see that you have something that can make you super, super sticky with a business customer. I mean, I can't imagine how, after you're done, making the pitch to a bank, they're not like, shut up and take my money,
Yeah, that's usually how it goes. Because again, we're a small company in Detroit. To be able to penetrate, this many banks, we think we have a good path to be in, over a quarter of the U.S. Financial institutions by the end of next year into the following year. So yeah, things are going great on that side. And the interesting thing on the financial institution, on the bank side, is what you said from your bank experience is absolutely correct. They make all the money on the commercial side. But from the bank side, the small business is more like the retail user than it is the commercial user, right? On the big commercial side, I'm going to take you out to lunch every month, maybe every quarter. Are we meeting your needs in terms of batch ACH and wire transfers and any sort of lending that you need to move the business forward? If you're the landscaper, that's doing $1 million a year, $2 million a year, healthy business, good number of employees, I don't have enough bankers to go around and meet with every $2 million business, right? And take them to lunch. It just, the model doesn't work. So what we saw was the Silicon Valley folks, God bless them, coming in with their solutions, right? The Stripes, the Squares, the PayPals, saying, you know, the economics don't work for the financial institutions to service these people, so we're going to spin up products and do the land grab to move them over. So we're basically the answer to that. And what we found is the financial institution, the bankers and the folks at the credit union still have customer service nailed, right? In many of the situations, the small business owners that we talk to, because you know me, we're doing jobs interviews every week, right? Trying to, you know, talk to our small business owners, make sure that we got the story right. Um, they're saying, I like my banker, like they're at the corner of, you know, Second and Main, and I've, you know, been in this town, and I know the folks. And I know that Autobooks is a separate company, but I love the fact that if I get into trouble, I can walk in, I can look my banker in the eye, I can answer questions. And it's what the Silicon Valley folks just, they can't handle that, right? You know, currently. So again, we're talking about people's livelihoods, people's dollars, and you can't mess around with that. So the combination of being able to bring software that gets the economies of scale and gets the economics right for the financial institution so that they can go down market and service those small business customers and provide them the tools that they need in conjunction with that personal service is really, you know, we think it's a winning combination.
Absolutely. I definitely see that and experiencing it firsthand now because you know the experience being a small business owner with the bank, you realize very quickly like you're not their primary focus. You know, when I ask for certain things, they're like, oh yeah, I need to see a little bit of this before I enable that on your account and all this stuff, and I'm just like, okay, like, do you want me to stay here or not?
Yeah.
You know.
I don't know how to satisfy that requirement. Like I'm just not there, you know, at that scale. And yeah, they're in a pinch. So again, you know, software is the way out. So we just got to get it into the hands of as many bankers as possible, which will, you know, lead to the small business owners. And yeah, we're having a blast.
That's awesome. So, talk to me about how you going into this with that jobs lens. Like, you know, do you have any stories that you can tell without sharing trade secrets about using jobs to be done at Autobooks?
Yeah, so the backstory is a fun one, and I think it resonates with a lot of software folks. So I had known the two founders of Autobooks for like 15 years. Again, Detroit company, and we had both been, you know, in the software circles here. They had exited a previous business and then started Autobooks, started down the journey here. So we started having conversations, and basically the conversation was. A lot of what I said previously about the financial institution industry, they had figured out, right? So Steve, the founder, and I started sitting down, and he said, "Look, I got the banking side of this nailed. I can walk into a bank, I can tell that story. Look, you guys are up market, you're making, you know, all this money. The mid market small business owner, you're basically ignoring. You're good at servicing the retail customers, the personal checking accounts, right? Because that's also the bread and butter in terms of the deposits." So he had people signing up for that, and banks getting on board. And what he was asking me to do is come crack the code on the small business side, right? So I came in, basically started doing interviews with small business owners, and the thing that we learned almost immediately was we had gone to market, I think in a similar fashion of a lot of SaaS companies where we had spotted an opportunity and we just had a myriad of features that we were going to lay out in front of a small business customer, right? So if you think about, I use the term like the lightweight back office, which still like sort of makes me itch, but um, it's lightweight bookkeeping. You can send an invoice, you can get paid, you can handle, you can do bill pay. There's a general ledger, there's a balance sheet. We can do automatic categorization of what's in your accounts. You can do export, you can do import. There's like we've got the joke we tell is the Cheesecake Factory menu of features, right? Here's all the stuff that we offer. Like, what's exciting to you? And it led to just sort of baseline adoption, right? Like we would launch in a bank and we get a handful of users to sign up and start using us, but it wasn't that you know, sort of catching fire adoption that you want. So I started conducting interviews. And again, that like people that are familiar with jobs will know the process. You come in, you sort of look at the data, you cut the data a bunch of different ways. Who's logging in every day? Who's logging in once a month? How do I get a good sampling of the population if I'm going to do, 10, 12, 15 interviews? Got the interviews lined up, got the team in the room, did the interviews. And to a T, what we heard was a struggle related to getting paid. So again, it's hard to go back in time, but we were leading with a bookkeeping narrative, an automated auto books, automated accounting narrative, and what we heard was um, either start of the business. And I'm just struggling. I'm trying to cobble together the thing. The funny thing that we hear all the time is like, I almost don't think about the need to get paid until it's too late. I got my product, I got my marketing, I launched my website, I'm doing deals, and then somebody says like, okay, send me an invoice. Like, what was the one of the first ones I did? The guy started a magazine, like 7 grand in advertising. Like, I love what you're doing here. I want to be your first advertiser. Send me an invoice. Great. Shook the hand, left the office. How do I send an invoice? He's back. Like, I got Microsoft Word open. I'm trying to figure this out. And then when I do send the invoice, he's going to send me a check. I don't really want to be handling all these checks. This is a mess. So I got to figure out how to get paid. So time and time again, we heard this struggle. And then you get the guy, sending the Microsoft Word invoice and that version of the struggle. And then you get the Square, PayPal, and Stripe struggle, which is I've got my bank and I trust my bank and I like my bank. Um, the credit card and merchant services that they offer me seem like a little bit too daunting. They want me to fill out all these applications. It's like a couple $100 a month. And then I've got this like terminal thing. I'm not a coffee shop where I'm like swiping a bunch of things. It's just like a hard thing to get into. So I end up going to Square, Stripe, PayPal. Um, and then I've got this dance that I do where I get paid and I need to move money from that account into my checking account, um, which comes with just there's hardship there, right? Um, same thing as you described. PayPal didn't know my business a whole lot, so when that 7 grand got paid for the advertising, they said this is too big for you, and we're holding it for 30, 60, 90 days. Well, that doesn't work. I'm just starting a business, and I need to get paid. The other piece is moving money from the PayPal account into the business checking account. I forget it. My accountant's on me because we missed payroll because I didn't move the money. There's like these extra steps that I just don't want to deal with. So we heard the struggle over and over again. People had, again, this is something we always talk about in jobs, is the customer, the consumer, the user always does the innovation for us, right? So they basically were coming to us like, I know you love the accounting narrative. Yeah, all the emails that I get and all the marketing is about accounting, but I saw something that said that you could send an invoice, and I took the leap of faith. I figured out that I could send an invoice, get enabled for essentially online merchant services credit card, and accept payments. And like, I think the accounting thing is cool. I'll check that out in January and February when I'm getting ready for taxes. But for now, you guys are a way to help me get paid. So that was it was foundational basically to the business. We shuffled our positioning. We tested a bunch of messaging that basically downplayed accounting and bookkeeping, and put the ability to send an invoice, the ability to get paid directly into your checking account without all this shuffle, right at the forefront of the messaging. And after we saw these are the fun hockey stick moments that you have in the business, right? So we had an inkling of what we thought the jobs were. We brought in this woman, Claire Sullentrop, who probably runs in similar circles as you. I think she was in Atlanta for a while, but she has formed this discipline with a bunch of people called conversion copywriting. So we basically brought her in. She's familiar with jobs. We said, look, read the transcripts of these interviews. We've done the analysis. We think these are what the jobs are. Can you write some copy and write some emails? And we're going to start doing some testing. And we just saw adoption kick up through the roof, right? It was one of those. Now I tell the story. It's been 5 years. You struggle and you sweat and you're nervous and you can't fall asleep, but you get to the point where you see that adoption kick up. And from that point on, it was just about aligning the product to more closely match what people were expecting in terms of a solution that would help them get paid. So we did things like one of the struggles that we heard was your invoicing system is cool, but it's I've got this like niche thing that I do. This lawyer that I spoke with took a lot of pride in his invoices. He basically said, "You're paying me to do all this work and research and write all these contracts and things for you. Like, I feel like I also deserve." They're also kind of writers by nature, right? Now that I'm thinking of the story, I deserve to really like detail out what I did for you when I send you this $10,000 invoice. And he's like, Autobooks, I can add a product and service, but like you give me, 500 characters for description. It's like not fitting my thing. So he said, what I do is I create an invoice in Autobooks and I say, for work on this project. And then in the memo field, I say, see attached Word document. In a Word document, I go through all this detail. And the Word document is really my invoice because I'm spelling it all out. And then I sort of like batch that together with the Autobooks thing, send it out. And again, the customer pays me with credit card or ACH and I get the money and I'm happy. Like, the way he's describing it, again, he's the innovator. Like, but this is all great. What we ended up doing is we understood that we weren't always a perfect match for that customer. So we created what we call a payment link. And now every small business has the ability he can write his Word document. He can spin up an email to his customer and he'll say, see the attached, it's for all the work I did. Here's the payment link, key in the amount that you owe me and your credit card details. And that money flows into my checking account. We addressed that struggle through that conversation and the exploration of that job. We also noticed that a lot of businesses, just what we found is you're either businesses that invoice or you're a business that doesn't invoice. It's like the negative space. I painted your house, you owe me $5,000. If you're expecting this like elaborate detail of time and materials and sales tax and all, like you got the wrong guy. Like figure out how to get me the $5,000. And again, the payment link is like a really good solution. So essentially today accounts for over 50% of our revenue just from having that insight, basically stripping functionality away from the invoicing solution to give people more freedom about what they attach to their request for payment. Was one of the jobs insights. The second one, and then I'll take a breath and let you chime in and ask some questions, is just disintegrating the offering. So we essentially had back in the day, you would log into internet banking, you'd click a tab that said Autobooks. It would open our solution and you get to pick from that cheesecake menu offering of services. We disintegrated that. And now, again, when you log into internet banking, one of the first things you're going to see in your bank account is a link that says send an invoice. It's a very clear call to action that doesn't have a bunch of additional services bundled around it. And if you're the customer or you're the small business owner who walks out of that meeting where the guy just bought advertising from you and you open your bank account on your mobile banking app, that's going to resonate with you. I got to send an invoice. I got to get paid. So just like sort of pulling the product apart is just one of the big innovative leaps that we took based on the jobs work.
Wow, man, that is so cool. I think that finding out what the essentially the journey, the context, as Bob puts it, like finding out the context just opens up so many pathways and just makes it clear essentially like what you need to do as a product shop to be able to move something more towards adoptions. It's really cool to hear you talk about what it was like interviewing some of these folks and finding out like what it was like in their specific context, that taking away functionality wound up being the answer in some cases. So we touched a little bit on the new functionality that you put out alongside Apple that is going to enable people to get paid even easier. Talk to us about that journey. What is the functionality and who's it helping?
Yeah, so it really it fills a market niche for us that we were not going after. So you can think of us basically addressing half of the market. So we call it payments at a distance, right? I'm going to send you an invoice. I'm going to share a payment link with you. But there's the struggle that we heard over and over again was, I love the fact that the money moves directly into my checking account. I've got access to it there. It's on my debit card. I can go spend it. And it powers my business. But again, I'm integrating something else. I got to use the dongle from one of these companies that never works. The Bluetooth thing never connects, and it always turns into a mess. People are pulling out cash. It's just it's a disaster. We took a step forward with our payment link functionality using QR codes. So especially throughout, QR codes have these weird history where all of a sudden COVID hit and like everybody suddenly understood QR codes, including myself. I didn't sort of see the application before that. But with our payment link, Because of that struggle, we surfaced the ability, open internet banking, tap payment link, QR code, and you could show your payment link to a customer. They could snap it with their phone and quickly key in their card details. So you could functionally do what we call a card present, or face-to-face credit card transaction using the payment link. It still wasn't cutting it, right? I'd argue it's maybe parity with the dongle, maybe worse than the dongle because I've got to type it in, maybe better because I'm not waiting for the Bluetooth thing to connect. But in reality, when you look at that, it's not all that much better. So we've been working for about a year with the folks at Apple. They're very excited about obviously bringing Tap to Pay to market. We obviously bring the bank distribution model, so we're excited to get this into the hands of all the small business owners that bank and institutions that offer auto books, and essentially the experience is just world class. So if you're an existing Autobooks user, best case scenario, you already are accepting, invoice payments and things like that. You'll see this capability on your mobile device. You'll tap the button that says "Get paid with Tap to Pay." All you have to do is accept terms and conditions from Apple, and from there, you're underwritten for payments. You are essentially shown a keypad where you're going to type in the amount, and you're going to hold out the phone and tap the payment. If you're not an Autobooks user, the sign up process is extremely simple. So again, contrasting having to go in and apply for merchant services, right? I'm filling out a bunch of forms. I'm signing up for a yearly term, things like that. If you're not an existing Autobooks customer, again, you open that mobile app, you tap to pay. We're integrated with the bank's system of record. So we still have to fill out all of that merchant application information, but luckily we have it because, again, we're part of your bank account. So we've got your name, date of birth, everything that we need to get the application done. In some instances, we might ask you one or two questions. What year did you form your business? What's your average payment size? Things like that. It's one or two fields you can complete right on your mobile device. And again, in 30 seconds, you're going to be enabled for payments and ready to have somebody tap their card on your phone and accept that first payment. So super excited about it. It's one of those things where when you hold in the Apple guys did a great job with the experience. It actually taps you a couple times using the haptic feedback on your hand every time you take a credit card payment. People say it's like I can feel the money going into my checking account, which is pretty magical. But super exciting. And the thing that I think is interesting, we've spent a lot of time turning what we call that payment enablement process into something that happens very, very quickly. So we want you to be able to open your phone, see this capability, tap the button, and use it right away. And again, that comes from jobs struggles. We would do interviews where we would talk about, tell us about the first time you thought that you needed something new, all the way through when you adopted Autobooks. And the end of the story was always this wonky, like, I woke up in the morning and I had a meeting at noon over lunch, and I knew the person had to pay me. So I remembered this thing in my bank and I went and signed up, and I did the lunch and they gave me a check because it took you guys a day or two to run my background check and do the thing and stand up my account. And we figured out we've got to get really, really fast at this because, again, it's people aren't they're not planning their week around your product. They're waking up saying, oh my God, at lunch, this guy's going to pay me. I got to get paid. Let me, figure this out. So our capability is basically, when you're ready, tap the button, whether it's send an invoice, tap to pay, we're going to stand it up immediately for you and you can start accepting payments. And again, we're meeting business owners kind of right where they are in terms of that need.
Wow. Man, that is incredible. I the designer in me loves the little anecdote about Apple adding the haptic feedback. That's right.
You got it. Yeah, we'll figure out your bank thing. You got to hold it in your hand and have somebody tap the card. It's just it's my favorite thing to demo. I walk around in the street just you want to try this thing? Use my credit card.
That's amazing.
A little weird, but
man,
it's exciting.
Wow. I mean, so many things here. Getting to work with Apple, getting to put something out that people obviously need. I mean, just such a huge need to be able to get paid quickly. Thankfully, because I'm in consulting, it's not the sort of deal where when I drive off, the likelihood of me getting paid doesn't decrease necessarily.
Yeah.
But it is a thing, being able to accept payment on the spot in other areas. I'm an artist on the side. Yeah, like when I walk away, the
Yeah.
likelihood of me getting paid in a prompt manner decreases dramatically the moment I walk away. Being able to tap to pay is a huge deal, and I can only imagine so many other instances where this is just going to create so many possibilities. I was uh, in product at another software company, and deliveries. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
my God, deliveries, being able to accept tap to pay for specialized deliveries, that's going to be a huge deal.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, in addition to the small business owner, we've got the capability. You can add all of your employees, strip down functionality, right? They don't need to see your bank balance. They don't need to be able to do bill pay and send money out or anything like that. But the ability to, hey, you owe this, a couple grand for the delivery, tap, accept payment on the spot, and before we kind of relinquish control of the goods, it's all right there.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up here, I've got a question that I hope helps some folks out in the audience. Somebody's looking to apply, they're hearing all this and are like, okay, I see that Chris is having this great success with Jobs Theory. It's really making a difference in the business at Autobooks. How do I get my organization on board? If you're a product leader out there, how do you get your organization on the path to being able to implement the mental model of Jobs Theory?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and it really, like everything, it's so contextually dependent. I got a text message from a past colleague last week. I'm looking at, and it was one of the sort of most humbling things that I've read professionally. He said, I'm sitting here at a company meeting, listening to our product team, and it's made me miss your leadership. Not sure I'll ever be able to find another product leader like you. Hope you're doing well. And of course, like, I'm the interviewer, right? What's going on? Like, why are they missing the mark? Like, tell me, tell me more about it. And his answer was focus. You spend a tremendous amount of time focusing on the customer and basically pushing everything else aside. And so I continue the conversation with him, basically, saying, how are you going to get there? Because you can't get out of the situation that you're in without applying some effort. And he described what I think happens a lot, right? It's the loudest person in the room is pushing their initiatives forward. Sometimes that's the founder. Sometimes there's you got the enterprise salespeople who, again, they're fueling the business. They've got to do the deal. So it's can't blame them for wanting to get their stuff built. But essentially the challenge is, how do you move the loudest voice out of the center of the conversation and the customer into the center of the conversation? I've been fortunate enough where I get hired because of this skill, right? So it's I kind of have the deal up front, like, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do it, and if not, you got to find somebody else, because it's kind of my thing. But I have seen people have success. So what you've got to do is basically what you described. You got to get competing against luck. You got to get through it just to have the premise, and then you really need to learn the interview technique, which is daunting at first. Bob and I have a course you can find on Rewired Group. It's called Mastering Jobs to Be Done Interviews. Bob's also teaching another course. I think he's doing cohorts now, where you can get into essentially getting really comfortable spending an hour at a time talking to the customer about their journey. It creates anxiety at the beginning. You do it a couple times and you continue to practice, and you'll get good at it. You'll get really comfortable. And the joke we always tell is, people will thank you for taking an hour of their time, because nobody just shows up and asks you questions for an hour about yourself. It's just a very weird experience. You've got to get those things down, and then you've got to conduct interviews and just get one win. So carve out, it's like hook or crook. I've had to do this in the past. Like, I need to steal a little bit of engineering time, because look, I've got the story from a customer. Pretty sure there's a lot of folks like this. And let's do like a little bit of an iteration and just prove this thing out. And then you start to chip away at it. If you don't have the foundation, um, and you don't have the ability to interview, you're not going to be confident enough in your findings to, like, put yourself out there and make the bet on the product improvement. So it's like shoring up those skills, and then being able to do one example of, look, this wasn't the founder, this wasn't the sales guy. We actually took a little bit of a leap here based on a handful of conversations we had with customers. We have success. Now let's talk about how to do that over and over again. And essentially, that's what Bob and I have done with Rewired Group over the years, right? So the way that we developed the method in large part was mostly, large organizations bringing us in saying, hey, can you train one team, maybe two teams up on this method? Because we want to try it out on some initiatives just to see if it takes hold, see if the team likes it, see if it produces good value for the business. And then from there, you get a couple of wins and it spreads out and becomes, sort of more foundational to the business. So read Competing Against Luck, study the interview process, recruit folks, get that insight, and then you're going to have to take a swing. It's the tough part about product and engineering is at the end of the day, Ryan from 37 Signals talks about bet placing. It's all about, at the end of the day, you learn what you learn, and you're going to have to take the bet and take a swing and then hope it pays off and learn if it doesn't.
Man, that's huge. I love the way that you summarize that. I've found the same thing for me, and it was kind of the same thing once I went from consulting back into building. It was just sort of like, hey, this is how I do things. It was part of the selling point. And if we're, in the interviews and the conversations with executives, it's like, if I come in here, this is what I'm going to do. And people liked it. So
it either fits or it doesn't, but yeah, we got to be upfront about it. It's harder, the situation from my colleague and, the folks that you're talking to, if you don't have a lot of power to wield, it's just harder. It's not impossible. Like you gotta, it's the same thing that I was facing in my 20s, right? I'm a developer. I'm looking around. I'm going to, do my 10 hours of work. Not a big deal, but is there something better? Could we all just be operating a little bit more effectively? So let your curiosity, really motivate you there and learn what you need to do and try to get some wins.
Man, that's awesome. Where can folks find you, Chris?
I'm Chris CBS on Twitter and search. I think there's a couple of Chris Specks. You'll find me on LinkedIn. Chris Speck, a little bit more active on LinkedIn these days. I'm still posting on Twitter. So those are the two spots.
Awesome. Well, folks, let me try to see if I can summarize here, if I can do this justice. So the big thing here, in my opinion, is the fact that jobs theory works, right? Jobs theory works, and if you are in the business of serving a customer, which I mean, everybody, if you're in business, you are in the business of serving a customer. The way that you actually get to figuring out how to serve somebody in their context is by applying jobs theory. If you're going in out of the gate, make sure that you're doing the stuff that Chris talked about. Read the books, get the foundational knowledge that you need to get. Be able to essentially recruit some folks to talk to, and all you got to do is get one win. All you got to do is get one win to prove to the rest of the organization that this is worth it. And it's a lot easier for folks to just let you do your thing after you get that win. So
you got it.
Yeah, man. Chris, this has been super awesome. Thank you so much for being willing to be on the show, man. Hope to have you back to talk about some of the other stuff that you're doing, man. It's been awesome.
Awesome. Talk to you soon, Devin. Thanks.
All right, folks. Like I said, follow Chris if you haven't already, and be sure to give us a like and a follow on YouTube. And until next time, keep out serving your competition on your relentless pursuit to become an experienced leader. Catch you in the next one.